Hello and welcome to Boxing Tonight. Happy New Year, indeed. This is Mirror Fighting's look ahead to this evening's bouts. And Richard, we really are, we're lucky, I suspect, fair to say that 2 days into the new year, we already have a huge fight to talk about. Is, of course, Luke Campbell and Ryan Garcia, technically for the WBC's interim lightweight world title. But if I talk about that organisation's situation with the 135-pound division too much, I'll just get angry, and it's a new year, so let's avoid that. But when this fight was first it was ordered by the WBC quite some time ago, there was some surprise that Garcia took the fight rather than maybe take an easier option. Were you one of those people?
Yeah, I think I was a little bit surprised. I mean, it's obviously a tough fight, Luke Campbell. It's obviously Luke Campbell's got a lot of experience, and he's he's not quite been a world champion yet, but he's right up there as one of the sort of, he's probably as talented as, world champions in some of the weight classes. So, for Ryan Garcia to take that step up against him when there's not sort of a full world title on the line is, it's a big step up for Ryan Garcia. And you sense that, he obviously sees something in Luke Campbell that he's, confident that he can beat him. And he obviously feels ready to now sort of take that step up because he's looked pretty faultless so far, Ryan Garcia, but, hasn't really had the toughest of tests. So, this is the first big jump up, and it's interesting that he's chosen Luke Campbell to make that step up, I guess. So big sort of sink or swim moment for Ryan Garcia, I think.
That's the thing. It's such a hard fight to call, in my opinion, because we know so little about Ryan Garcia. We know that he is one of the most popular fighters on the internet. He could probably be a social media star without boxing. 7 million followers, I think, on Instagram. A few more than you, Rich, actually. But he hasn't really fought anyone who you could say was world class. So the only barometer, if you like, is potential. And it's so hard for us who don't see him in the gym every day to really to decide to say how good he can be. So it's hard to pick Ryan Garcia on what you know, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we say it a lot, but it's a classic case of one of those sort of on one side, what you're going to get from Luke Campbell, how good he is, he's got sort of, obviously he's come up short a couple of times in the past against really top level fighters, but, we've seen the level he's operating at. And then, the other side, you've got the guy who's sort of taking the risk, who's taking the punt, who, it's all ifs, buts and maybes, a lot of question marks over him. So, I think he's the sort of golden boy of boxing at the moment over in America, isn't he? Ryan Garcia, or one of them. He's sort of been tipped for that, being their sort of next big star. He's on the rise, and there's like a lot of it, big expectations around him. But Luke Campbell, you sense it's kind of, I figured out, I say this a lot, but it's sort of now or never for Luke Campbell, in the fact that you look at the lightweight division, you've got sort of Ryan Garcia, he's only going to get better regardless of what happens tonight. He's got time on his side. You've got sort of Gervonta Davis, who's kind of hoping to kick on. You've got Teofimo Lopez, who's so young, who beat Lomachenko. It's such an exciting division, and you sense that those three, especially, everyone's talking about those three sort of dominating the division. They're only going to get better from here. And the sort of age he's at now, Luke Campbell kind of needs this fight to be at the right time for him. He needs it to, hopefully, from his point of view, it to be a little bit too soon for Ryan Garcia. And if, Luke Campbell can sort of just steal the march, just get ahead of them and put himself in a good position, he could have some huge fights in the future. But on the flip side, Ryan Garcia is not going to want him sort of standing in the way of what's a huge career and a huge sort of division for him in the next few years.
For sure. And you mentioned Luke Campbell. He's 33 now. Of course, he's had 2 world title fights, lost to Jorge Linares and then to Vasily Lomachenko in his last fight, actually, last year. I think you're right when you say it's now or never. The division is so packed. And the thing is, you could look at it in 2 ways. One, Luke Campbell just hasn't been good enough. He wasn't good enough to beat Jorge Linares. Of course, there were a lot of personal issues there. He just lost his dad. And he wasn't good enough to beat Vasily Lomachenko, but then only 2 people have been. One was a long time ago. Or you can say, he could just been unlucky, because so many other fighters can find a way to a world title much easier. And even this one, this is, as I said, this is for the interim title. So even if this goes to plan and he wins, in theory, he should then fight Devin Haney for the regular title. But then even Devin Haney is not really considered to be the best lightweight in the world because you've got Teofimo Lopez there. So on one hand, you kind of have to feel a little bit of sympathy for Luke Campbell. In a different era, he probably could have had a world. I mean, look at someone like Anthony Crawler, for example. Now, I would argue Luke Campbell is a better fighter than Anthony Crawler, but Anthony Crawler was world champion. It just really depends on when you get into position and who happens to be there at the time.
Yeah, exactly, and that's why you sense that if he's ever going to get into the position, it sort of has to be now, because, like I said, all those guys that we mentioned, sort of Haney, Davis, Lopez, Garcia, they've all got time on their side. So, the way the timelines have worked out, it just, like you say, I'm inclined to think it's just he's been unlucky. It just hasn't worked out for him. But if he can beat Ryan Garcia and then get himself in a position to hopefully, just get that world title before. Because you sense that in sort of 3, 4, 5 years' time, especially, those young guys are going to be, stepping it up to another level. They're all so talented that, Luke Campbell needs to sort of try and get there while he can almost, and just get ahead of them. But I think it's intriguing as well with the Lomachenko fight, because obviously Luke Campbell put up a decent fight against Lomachenko. It was a pretty solid performance, and obviously Lomachenko from that has gone on to sort of get beaten by Lopez, and I think. Campbell talked a little bit about how if he'd fought against that version of Lomachenko, he'd have won as well. And he sort of feels he took something out of Lomachenko a bit. So I guess that sort of that performance, it's interesting looking back on that one now. But I think as well, the fact Ryan Garcia's taken the fight. I think Ryan Garcia obviously sees something. He obviously doesn't fear too much with Luke Campbell. He thinks he can get the better of him. So. Obviously both men think they've got what it takes to win it. It's a 50-50 fight. When, both fighters take the 50-50 fight, they obviously believe they've got what it takes to come out on top. So, it's going to be interesting. It's a really fascinating one to call. I think I think the odds are criminally in favour of Garcia, to be honest. I think there's a lot of value on Luke Campbell, isn't there? Garcia is the sort of overwhelming favourite. I don't know what you think, but I think the sort of value on, Campbell to win, or especially to sort of win on points or in the later rounds, is pretty good from what I've seen. Do you know what you think?
Yeah, I think we had this problem with Callum. I know Callum Smith lost to Canelo very comprehensively, but I think there is often an attitude, whether it be bookmakers, whether it be American fighters, whether it be American fight fans, even journalists, when it's a fighter from Britain going over to fight someone from America, there's a little bit, I think, of snobbery. I think they do kind of look at our fighters a lot of the time and think, not good enough. I think that definitely happened with Callum Smith. It's happened with Liam Williams when there's been talk about him fighting Andre. There's a lot of comments on there. Who is Liam Williams? Well, hang on. If you don't take the time to find out who he is, then don't pass judgment. So I think these odds definitely have sort of gone. I think it was fairly close when it was first announced, but Garcia now, as you say, overwhelming favourite. And you can only base that on potential. Or if you think Luke Campbell is just finished, or at least past it, at least not got enough to come back. And I think you're right. I think Garcia is too short because he hasn't been in with anyone of Luke Campbell's class. He hasn't. If he's been 12 rounds, it was once, but I'm not sure he has. And if he has, it wasn't a tough 12 rounds. If this fight goes the distance, I can't see it being a comfortable 12 rounds for Ryan Garcia. So at some point, and if it is a comfortable 12 rounds, then he's either really special or Luke Campbell's just not on it. At some point, though, I think he will be under pressure, and that will be the key. Can he, when he's suddenly stuck, and Luke Campbell's coming on to him, bringing it on to him, Luke Campbell might be behind on the cards, but he brings it on late. That's when we'll know, I think, how good Ryan Garcia is. It's when he faces some trouble. And for me, I think what I do think will happen actually is I think Luke Campbell will be knocked down. He was down against Linares. He was down against Lomachenko. You just have to look at Garcia's highlight reel to know that he's got knockout power, particularly in that left hand. So I think Campbell will go down, and then it might be a case of Garcia clinging on to win on points. How do you see it going?
Yeah, I think that's a decent shout. I think I think I quite fancy Luke Campbell to win on points personally, but I think it's going to be interesting. I think obviously Campbell, he's got sort of great amateur pedigrees. He's got the experience. I think he'll know sort of how to. I think he's got that experience of big fights now that Ryan Garcia maybe hasn't yet got. I think it's one of those where any outcome wouldn't really surprise you. But I can see, Luke Campbell doing enough to make it go the distance, and I think he's got the know-how now to sort of just get through the rounds, win the rounds, do what he needs to win the rounds, and I think he could sort of could come away with the win personally. But again, like we say, there's so much unknown with Ryan Garcia that we could come out of this saying Ryan Garcia is the real deal. He's so special. He's he's the next big thing. So I think every British fan sort of wants Luke Campbell to win it, wants Luke Campbell to get that step closer to eventually winning a world title, because he's done so much for British boxing, going all the way back to sort of London 2012, and he's come so close. He's obviously got been through the sort of family tragedy and stuff like that with his dad. I think everyone's sort of rooting for Luke Campbell going out there to America, and credit to both of them for taking the fight. And I think Luke Campbell could just about do enough, but at the same time, don't think anyone would be too surprised if it's the other way around with Ryan Garcia. It's it's a hard one to call.
And of course, we have the issue with a British fighter going across to America again. There are fans in Texas, and then you've got the judges. It's just so hard. It's almost, from what I've read, just been the idea of Luke Campbell winning on points has been almost written off just because it's assumed he can't get a decision, which is really, it's still sad actually that can still be the sort of view in 2021. But it's true, isn't it? Like, it's so difficult to go across there. But then again, it's often the same to come here as well. But it's sad, isn't it, that we could still be talking about it, that you can't. You almost have to, why should Luke Campbell have to go out and knock out Ryan Garcia just to win? I don't think it's fair at all.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I see the point, but I don't, I don't think it's just the way of boxing, isn't it? I don't particularly look at it as one of those that you're thinking entirely that way. I don't. There's certain fights or certain like countries that people go to and you think automatically like you're never getting a decision there. Like there's no way you're going to go there and get a decision. And I don't particularly feel that strongly about this. Like I think if Campbell puts in a good performance, he's capable of winning on points. Obviously, Garcia is going to be the favourite. And like you say, we have it over here. We look at the Ritz and Vasquez springs to mind in recent memory, doesn't it, for the judges' scorecards? It's just the way of boxing, I suppose. And I suppose fans in there probably doesn't help an awful lot on that case. But be interesting. I think the odds certainly suggest that not a lot of people think Luke Campbell can win it on points. But we'll see.
We will indeed. Now, we should mention, of course, that an absolute treat for UK fight fans tonight. Of course, normally this fight should be on 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, but it is actually 11 p.m. Ring Walk in Dallas, Texas, live on DAZN, which is still $199 a month for now. So, what a way to start the year. No excuses. I'm sure everyone can manage to stay up till 11 o'clock. I'll be back tomorrow, Sunday, with George Groves and Declan Taylor, with After the Bell, to look back on Luke Campbell's fight against Ryan Garcia and to talk about what's next in the lightweight division. From me, from Rich, thank you for watching. Take care and enjoy the fights.